Ever wondered if our advanced society is really better than the past? Medieval peasants lacked our technology and comforts, but they had surprising advantages modern Americans have lost. Their simple lives contained unexpected benefits that might make us question everything we thought we knew about progress. Forget what you learned in history class about medieval peasants working all day long. The truth might surprise you. Medieval peasants actually worked fewer hours than we do today. Let's look at some real numbers. Historical records show medieval workers enjoyed about 150 days off per year. That's almost half the year. They had all Sundays free, plus dozens of religious feast days throughout the calendar. Some saints probably became popular just because people wanted another day off work. Who's this new saint? Never heard of him, but if it means no plowing today, he's my new favorite. During winter months, farm work naturally slowed down. With shorter daylight hours and frozen fields, peasants spent more time indoors. Modern Americans trudge to work regardless of season, staring at screens under bright lights, whether it's snowing or burning hot outside. The typical medieval workday wasn't a straight 8-hour shift either. Work followed the sun and seasons. During harvest, yes, they worked from sunrise to sunset, but throughout most of the year, the pace was relaxed. Afternoon naps were common in many regions. Try telling your boss you need a 2-hour nap because it's tradition, and see how that goes. Medieval society also viewed free time differently. Leisure wasn't considered lazy. It was essential for community and spiritual life. Compare that with today's hustle culture where people brag about working 60 hours weekly and sleeping just 4 hours a night. The modern 40-hour work week keeps many Americans tied to their jobs. Add commuting time, which medieval peasants didn't have, and we lose another 5 to 10 hours weekly. Medieval peasants didn't get messages from their lord at midnight asking about tomorrow's harvest. When work ended, it actually ended. A recent study found that average American office workers spend 47 hours per week working, with nearly a third putting in 50-plus hours. About 40% of Americans check work emails outside of office hours. The medieval schedule also included celebrations for changing seasons, spring planting celebrations, midsummer festivals, harvest gatherings. These weren't just days off. They connected people to the natural cycles of the world. Next time you're answering work messages on a Sunday, remember that those primitive medieval folk understood something we've forgotten, that life isn't meant to be all work. And just as their work schedule was simpler, so was their paperwork. Living in the Middle Ages meant freedom from the endless paperwork that follows us modern folks everywhere. A medieval peasant woke up each morning without worrying about renewing licenses, filing tax returns, or updating their information on dozens of websites. Bureaucracy barely existed for average people back then. The social structure was clear. Peasants worked the land, lords collected a share of crops, and everyone knew where they stood. No confusing fine print or terms to accept. When medieval folks needed to prove their identity, they didn't stand in line for hours at a government office. Their neighbors simply said, "Yep, that's him. Known him since he was the size of a turnip." The average American spends about 13 hours preparing their taxes each year. That adds up to over 6 billion hours nationwide just on tax paperwork. Medieval peasants paid their dues in grain, eggs, or labor. No complicated forms or calculations. Healthcare didn't involve insurance claims or coverage fights. If you got sick, the local healer treated you with what they had. Medieval medicine wasn't great, but at least no one spent hours arguing with insurance companies about coverage. Medieval people didn't have credit scores determining their worth. They didn't receive pages of tiny legal text every time they opened an account. Lending happened face-to-face, based on reputation within the community. Renting today means background checks, income proof, security deposits, and signing a lease agreement longer than most books. Medieval peasants typically lived in the same place their entire lives. Their housing rights came from tradition, not contracts. When rules needed to be enforced, it happened through direct human interaction. Village elders handled disputes in plain language everyone understood. Today, we need lawyers to translate legal words into normal English. Modern customer service would have shocked medieval folks. "Your call is important to us. Please continue to hold." Medieval problem solving was direct. "The mill's not working? Let's go talk to the miller right now." Marriage was less complicated too. Medieval couples didn't need to file paperwork with multiple government offices. A church ceremony or sometimes just a public promise made it official.
Administrative burdens contribute heavily to modern stress levels. Our medieval ancestors may have worked hard, but they didn't come home to mailboxes stuffed with urgent letters. While we've gained many modern conveniences, we've also created mountains of red tape. Perhaps there's wisdom in cutting unnecessary complications from our overly documented lives. Having escaped this paper prison, medieval people could focus on other concerns. The food on a medieval peasant's table would put most modern health food stores to shame. Every meal was what we now pay extra for: organic, locally grown, and completely free of artificial additives. Not because they were health-conscious trendsetters, but because they had no other option. What exactly did medieval people eat? Their diet centered around whole grains like barley, rye, and oats. Fresh vegetables came straight from garden plots, varying with the seasons. Cabbages, onions, leeks, turnips, and garlic were staples. Fruits were picked ripe from nearby trees or wild bushes. Even the herbs that flavored their food were freshly harvested, not dried in jars for months. Did medieval peasants eat meat? Yes, but differently than we do. Meat wasn't an everyday luxury, but appeared on special occasions or as small additions to soups and stews. Fish was common near rivers and coasts. Most protein came from eggs, cheese, and milk, all from animals that ate natural diets themselves. When medieval folk had a sweet craving, they couldn't grab a candy bar with 47 unpronounceable ingredients. Their desserts? Honey, fruit, or maybe a simple pastry for celebrations. No high fructose corn syrup or red dye number 5 in sight. Modern processed foods are designed by food scientists to hit the perfect bliss point, that magical combination of salt, sugar, and fat that keeps us eating more than we should. Medieval meals weren't engineered to be addictive. They were filling, nutritious, and linked to what the land provided each season. A fascinating study from the University of Cambridge examined medieval skeletons and found that dental problems were actually less common than today, despite the lack of toothpaste and dental care. Why? Their low-sugar diet protected their teeth naturally. The absence of processed foods had major health benefits. Diabetes was extremely rare in medieval Europe. Without sugary sodas, candy, and processed carbs flooding their bodies with glucose, people's insulin systems weren't constantly overwhelmed. Obesity was uncommon among peasants. Their active lifestyle combined with a whole food diet kept their weight in check. Heart disease, now the leading killer in America, was much less prevalent in medieval times. Without trans fats, excessive sodium, and heavily processed oils, their cardiovascular systems faced fewer challenges. A medieval peasant's cholesterol levels would likely make a modern doctor jealous. Food preservation relied on natural methods: smoking, drying, fermenting, and salting. These techniques not only kept food edible, but often enhanced its nutritional value. Fermented foods like sauerkraut provided beneficial probiotics, supporting gut health long before microbiome became a buzzword. Modern food labels need a dictionary to understand. What's sodium benzoate? Why is there disodium phosphate in my chicken? Medieval food labels would be refreshingly simple. Bread, flour, water, salt, yeast, made yesterday by the baker down the street. Sure, medieval folk faced food shortages and lacked variety during harsh winters. Their diet wasn't perfect, but in many ways, their simple, unprocessed food protected them from the chronic diseases now plaguing modern society. While their pantries might have been limited compared to our overflowing supermarkets, their bodies benefited from food that was real, natural, and unchanged by industrial processing. This wholesome diet kept them healthier in many ways than our supposed advanced nutrition. And speaking of health benefits, their strong social communities helped them avoid another modern epidemic. Many people today pay for therapy or spend hours on social media because humans need connection, something medieval peasants got naturally every day. Medieval villages were real-life social networks. Everyone knew everyone deeply. They understood your strengths, flaws, and family history going back generations. In a community of 50 to 200 people, you couldn't hide. Daily routines created bonds. Women gathered to wash clothes, sharing news. Men worked fields together, solving problems. Children played in mixed-age groups without adult watching. Every activity strengthened community ties. Modern people spend thousands of dollars on team-building retreats to create the same connection medieval folks got just by trying to move a stuck cart out of the mud. Village celebrations weren't optional events you might skip if tired. They were essential to community life, marking seasons and important moments. Dancing, singing, and feasting united everyone in shared joy. Loneliness, now a serious health problem, was rare in medieval times. A recent study found that 61% of young American adults feel seriously lonely despite technology. Medieval communities made true isolation almost impossible. If someone didn't show up as expected, neighbors checked immediately. Houses supported connection too. Medieval homes weren't private fortresses, they were small, simple, and often shared. Many generations lived under one roof. Doors stayed unlocked. Villages were built with houses around common areas where people naturally met throughout the day. Hard times created unbreakable bonds. When disaster struck, the community faced it together. No medieval peasant would ignore a neighbor whose roof collapsed. Without outside help, people relied on each other. And this need fostered deep relationships. These days we text, "We should catch up sometime," and never do. Medieval folks couldn't ghost their neighbors unless they actually became ghosts. Children weren't driven between scheduled activities. They grew up within adult society, learning by watching and helping. They knew exactly where they belonged and what would be expected of them later. Modern people often choose between career success and relationships. Medieval peasants didn't face this problem. Work and social life were completely mixed together. Helping a neighbor wasn't just being nice, it strengthened bonds everyone needed to survive. This connected lifestyle provided security that many modern people search for their whole lives, and with strong community support came another advantage. Money troubles keep millions of Americans awake at night. A survey from 2023 revealed that 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Medieval peasants, despite their many challenges, avoided this kind of stress. Housing worked differently in medieval times. Most peasants lived under a system called tenure, where they worked the Lord's land in exchange for living in their home and farming a portion for themselves. No monthly rent checks, no 30-year mortgage with interest. Once a peasant family settled somewhere, they usually stayed for generations. Modern Americans check their bank accounts daily with dread. Medieval peasants check their chicken coops instead. At least eggs are useful when you're broke. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in America now tops $1,700 monthly in many cities. Medieval peasants paid their housing costs through labor and crops, and this payment stayed roughly the same year after year. No medieval lord could suddenly double the rent without risking a revolt. Credit cards weren't invented until the 20th century. While medieval people could borrow from each other, or sometimes from early banks, carrying thousands in high-interest debt would have seemed crazy. The average American with credit card debt now carries a balance of $5,500. Medieval apprenticeships work differently than modern education. Young people learn trades by working directly with masters, earning while learning. No decades of student loan payments hanging over their heads. Medieval homes weren't filled with expensive furniture, electronics, and appliances needing constant replacement. A sturdy wooden table might serve a family for generations. The medieval version of checking your credit score was making sure the local baker still waved at you in the morning. If he did, you were financially sound. Medieval peasants walked most places. No car payments, no insurance premiums, no expensive repairs, no gasoline costs. The average American spends over $9,000 yearly just keeping a car running. Medieval taxation happened mostly in goods or services, not cash. You gave the Lord grain from your harvest or worked his fields for certain days. This system connected taxes directly to what you produced. The financial simplicity of medieval life meant less mental burden. No tracking multiple payment due dates, no juggling various accounts, no comparing complicated policies. This freedom from financial complexity left more room for other aspects of life. Sleep doesn't seem like something medieval peasants should have had better than us. Their beds were stuffed with straw, not memory foam. Their pillows weren't cooling gel. Their blankets weren't weighted. Yet when it comes to healthy sleep patterns, these primitive people had us beat by a mile. The secret? Medieval folks followed natural light cycles. Without electricity, their day generally began at sunrise and wound down at sunset. This pattern matched human biology perfectly. Our bodies produce melatonin, the sleep hormone, when darkness falls. Modern people disrupt this natural rhythm with artificial light, especially the blue light from screens. Today, we spend $60 on sleep masks to block light, while medieval peasants just experienced this weird thing called darkness for free. A fascinating study from the University of Colorado found that when modern people camp without electronics for just 1 week, their sleep cycles quickly reset to match the sun. Medieval people lived their entire lives this way. Today we scroll through social media at 2 in the morning wondering why we can't sleep. Medieval peasants were already enjoying their 6th hour of solid rest while dreaming about probably more turnips. Oh, look, another turnip dream. How exciting! But medieval sleep wasn't just about following daylight. Historical records reveal something even more interesting. Medieval people often practiced biphasic sleep. They'd sleep for about 4 hours, wake for an hour or two around midnight, then sleep another 4 hours until dawn. During this midnight waking period, people did all sorts of things. They prayed, talked quietly with family, worked on small crafts, or even visited neighbors. Imagine walking to your neighbor's house at 1 in the morning. Hey, I saw your candle was lit. Want to discuss crop rotation techniques? I couldn't sleep thinking about where to plant the barley. Modern sleep scientists have discovered that this pattern might actually be more natural for humans than our current try to get 8 straight hours approach. When research subjects are placed in environments without artificial light, many naturally fall into this 2-phase sleep pattern. The average medieval peasant likely got around 8 to 9 hours of total sleep, far more than modern Americans who average just 6.8 hours. More than 1/3 of American adults don't even get the minimum recommended 7 hours of sleep regularly. We have 23 different sleep apps on our phones telling us how badly we're sleeping. Medieval peasants had 0 apps and 0 sleep problems. Connection? You decide. Other aspects of medieval life promoted good sleep too. Physical labor throughout the day meant bodies were genuinely tired when bedtime came. No caffeine after noon, no late night snacks loaded with sugar, no stressful news alerts just before bed. We spend hundreds of dollars on sleep apps and white noise machines. Medieval peasants just listened to the village guard yell, "All's well," every hour. At least someone was checking. Their sleep environment, while not luxurious, had benefits. Homes were cool at night, which sleep experts now say is ideal. Without electric heating keeping rooms warm all night, medieval bedrooms naturally reach the cooler temperatures that promote deeper sleep. Our bedtime routine: set thermostat, adjust humidifier, take melatonin, put on eye mask, insert earplugs. Their bedtime routine: blow out candle. Done. Light pollution didn't exist either. When medieval people experienced darkness, it was truly dark. Modern city dwellers rarely experience true darkness. Streetlights, business signs, and the general urban glow disrupt our brain's ability to signal that it's time for deep sleep. While medieval people had their sleep disrupted by occasional things like rats, insects, or uncomfortable beds, they were free from the systematic sleep disruption built into modern life. This natural, abundant sleep protects their physical and mental health in ways modern people can only envy. And speaking of things that protected their well-being, medieval people were also free from another modern problem. The medieval world had many problems, but giant corporations tracking your every move wasn't one of them. In the modern United States, just 10 corporations control nearly everything we eat. Medieval peasants got their food directly from fields they could see. The bread came from the village baker, your neighbor, not Bread Corp International with shareholders demanding higher profits. Modern stores carefully design layouts to manipulate your shopping. Medieval markets had no psychology teams figuring out how to trick you into buying more turnips. Our marketing strategy? Having turnips. That's it. Work life was different too. A medieval craftsperson learned their trade through apprenticeship, then became a master who controlled their own work. They set their hours, determined quality, and dealt directly with customers. Today, 78% of Americans work for someone else, often in large corporations where decisions come from distant executives. Medieval workers typically spent their lives doing one craft and becoming truly skilled. The average worker today will change jobs 12 times during their career. Corporate team building exercises try to create workplace bonds. Medieval guilds shared actual skills and occasionally fought rival guilds with sticks. Nothing builds team spirit like defending blacksmiths against those arrogant candle makers. Medieval peasants never worried about their personal information being harvested and sold. Today, the average American is in more than 1,000 databases. Companies track what you buy, read, where you go, and who you talk to. A study revealed that major corporations now own more than 60% of all businesses in America. Medieval economies were truly local, with wealth distributed among many small producers. The physical environment wasn't covered in corporate logos and advertisements either. The average modern American sees between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements daily. That's a form of mental pollution medieval people never experienced. Even our language has been taken over by corporations. We use brand names as verbs and recognize thousands of logos instantly. Medieval language was rich with local expressions and practical knowledge. The three richest Americans now own more wealth than the bottom 50% of the country combined. Medieval inequality existed too, but without massive corporations funneling money to the top, the gaps were less extreme. Modern corporations spend billions studying how to keep us engaged and buying. Medieval merchants had a simpler advertising strategy, yelling fresh fish really loudly in the market square. While corporations have brought many benefits, the medieval freedom from their influence allowed people a different kind of liberty. They weren't constantly tracked, analyzed, and monetized in every aspect of their existence. And when they wanted entertainment, they didn't need corporate media either. They created their own amusements. Can you imagine life without TikTok, Netflix, or video games? Medieval people weren't bored without these things. Their entertainment created genuine connections and skills that many modern people lack. Storytelling was huge in medieval times. Tales passed through spoken word before books were common. Everyone learned to listen and use their imagination. Professional storytellers traveled between villages, sharing news and exciting adventures as community events. Modern kids say, "I'm bored," while holding devices connected to the world's knowledge. Medieval children said, "I'm bored," and were handed a stick to guard chickens from foxes. Character building, music filled medieval lives. Most people made their own music with simple instruments like drums, flutes, and strings. Singing happened during work, celebrations, or just to pass time. Only 15% of Americans can play a musical instrument today, compared to most medieval people having basic music skills. Physical games kept everyone active. Children played tag and various ball games. Adults competed in archery, wrestling, and strength contests. These built useful skills and connected people through shared experiences. Festivals marked important dates with performances, competitions, and special foods. May Day, harvest festivals, and religious holidays provided entertainment planned months in advance. Today, we message friends, spend 45 minutes deciding what to watch, then sit silently staring at screens. Medieval entertainment? The juggler is here. Everyone come watch. Crafts weren't just practical, they were fun. Wood carving and embroidery filled winter evenings. Games like chess and backgammon challenged the mind, while dice and card games provided simpler enjoyment. Wandering performers brought excitement to village life. Jugglers, acrobats, and musicians traveled between communities. Their arrival was a major event that drew everyone together. Medieval entertainers had a low bar for success. I can do a handstand, and my monkey collects coins. Boom. Instant crowd. This self-reliance in entertainment mirrors everything else we've seen about medieval peasant life. They had a directness to their existence that's largely missing from our modern lives today.